Hi, my name is Benny Johnson. As some of you know, I've been struggling with addiction. However, I decided to change my life and went into recovery. I started this podcast 90 Days Clean, and I want to take you along in my journey. What does lie ahead of me? Let me be frank, I do not know. Will I ever drink again? I do not know. This is how Stairway to Redemption was born. It is my search for answer in a real-time process of what is going to work for me. It is then my aspiration to help you figure out what's going to work for you. It is our journey together. Hello there, guys, and welcome to another episode of Stairway to Redemption. Today, my guest is Mercedes. We're going to open the second episode of 2024 with talking about what are the challenges for the queer community when it comes to sobriety. And I have the great guest for you, Mercedes. Mercedes, how are you doing?
I'm doing okay. I'm a little tired, a little groggy. I'm on meds that kind of make me a little groggy, so little tired, but I'm hanging in there. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so like that's a perfect segue for the next question, the state of the mind address. So tell us what's going on in your life lately. Something deeper than, I'm just doing fine.
Yeah. They're playing away. My doctors are kind of playing around with some dosages for my meds. So yeah, so trying to
Mhm.
adjust to some side effects and everything like that. But yeah, so just kind of dealing with a little bit of sedation in the mornings and that kind of stuff. But yeah, hanging in there.
I see. Yeah, like, I've heard a lot of things from, the people who are taking medication that there's that period where like they just play around with dosage,
Yeah.
like as if like trial and error, like, I don't know what it's like. You're gonna share more about it, I'm sure, later,
Sure.
because I'm sure it's part of the challenges you face.
Yeah.
But why don't we start with your story? So, like, what was your relationship with alcohol, and how did it start?
Yeah, I would say I've never really had a healthy relationship with alcohol. I'd say I started drinking around like maybe 17 or 16 or something like that in high school. Um, and yeah, I can remember even like the first time I drank, like it was like complete blackout, like just, binge drinking, that sort of stuff. So kind of all throughout my teens and like early 20s, I was never really like a daily drinker, but I was definitely like a binge drinker on like weekends and stuff like that. So yeah, so definitely struggled with that. And yeah, never really was able to kind of find a way to have like that balance or moderation for me personally. Yeah, like I
Mm-hmm.
mentioned, I'm on a lot of meds. So I started the meds around 17, 18, when I was around 17 or 18 years old. And so the medications interact with the alcohol as well and kind of make it a little bit stronger in terms of like, getting drunk or, stuff like that faster. So that was also a challenge. And then I did have a period of about 4.5 years of sobriety, which was really good. And then I relapsed at the end of last year. So I've been kind of going back and forth, relapsing, having periods of sobriety, going back and forth. So I'm still kind of trying to get back on that, sober path and everything like that. So kind of in the middle of kind of readjusting my journey. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Um, that's very interesting because after having, I mean, it's like a significant period of sobriety, 4 years. I'm myself about to get hopefully 1 year next month. But what was, do you want to talk about it? What was the trigger that made it you relapse? Like, if you don't mind sharing with the audience.
Yeah, of course. It was a breakup. That was kind
Mm-hmm.
of the trigger, but I have like really bad mental health issues. specifically borderline personality disorder. And one of the symptoms of borderline is that you can get really impulsive, and that might be related to substances or not. So for me, it
Mm-hmm.
is. So yeah, so a part of borderline is that you're very sensitive to rejection. So kind of having a breakup really triggered that, like, sense of rejection. And you then got impulsive and, started drinking again. And so just been trying different things to kind of get back on that sober path. Yeah.
I see. Like, yeah, like I have like that's what in the especially in I'm just gonna keep it in the AA community. They like always talk about like how you should not date or you should not date within a year or that kind of stuff. And your story basically is a proof that like a year or 4 years, it doesn't matter. Like if those experiences happen to us, like um it's not the guarantee that being 4 years sober is going to get you through it better than a year sober. So but yeah, like how did you handle it? Like what's your process now?
Yeah, I'm doing a lot of different things right now to try to work on my sobriety. I'm working with like an addictions doctor. So he is like trying out with different medications with me, different craving medications. So I'm on two different craving medications right now, that I'm trying as well. And then yeah, I'm actively in therapy. Like I'm always in therapy for my mental health in general. um and then yeah, I would try to go to recovery meetings. I use like this app, it's
Mm-hmm.
called the Reframe app. It's like kind of an alcohol reduction app, based on neuroscience. So I try to go to their recovery meetings at least like once a week or so. So trying to do several different things for my sobriety. Yeah.
Yeah, that's very interesting. That's cool. Do you have like any activities that makes you? I know you're a writer.
Yes.
Does writing helps you also with your recovery? Do you do like do you have hmm, do you have any other activity that are either spiritual or physical that are outside of that are not addiction related that help you stay sober?
I would say I really like mindfulness. So I try to do meditation
Mm-hmm.
a few times a week. I find that helps not just with sobriety, but with life in general. I find it makes a huge difference and, get feeling more grounded and centered and things like that. And I would say, just like basic things like, trying to get out and see friends, regularly, going for coffee dates, things like that. It can help just kind of get you out of your head, get you out of, the house and doing different things. I don't do it as much right now because it's the winter, but I really enjoy photography. So I've been getting into that lately. So I find that's nice to get creative and again, get yourself kind of out of your head and, doing something a little bit more engaging. Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. Photography is a cool passion to have. Like I didn't get a chance. I don't know, passion to it for me. Like the different lenses, different cameras was like just a little bit off putting.
Mhm.
That's like that's a lot too much work. Especially that now like a phone can do a lot. So I guess my eye is not trained to see the difference
Mhm.
or to appreciate the difference. So but kudos to you. Yeah, let's circle back with to the mental health aspect of it. So um how is it navigating like mental health and being in the queer community? Is it like describe to us how it is. Is this something that's very prominent in the queer community? To have people who also deal with mental health issues when they're in addiction?
Yeah, I'm honestly not sure about the statistics on addiction. I know that
Mm-hmm.
specifically for, like, I identify as either bisexual or queer. I know
Mm-hmm.
specifically for bisexual people, there are higher rates of mental illness or,
Mm-hmm.
experiences of abuse and things like that, even compared to other members of the queer community.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely for bi people, and for other groups as well, there are quite high rates of mental health issues or experiences of abuse. So I'm not specifically sure about addiction, but it's definitely it can be something that, yeah, there can be a lot of overlap, because
Mm-hmm.
the theory is that for bi people you don't just have discrimination from people who are outside of the queer community, but you can also experience discrimination from people who are within the queer community, because bisexual people can sometimes be you know um, maybe like a little bit misunderstood or not included, by certain people. So yeah, there can be a lot of overlap with mental health issues. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like me personally, when I went to rehab and there were like three guys who were member of the queer gay community. They were like really cool, and one of them was in my daily group. So like the way work every morning, no Monday to Friday, every morning we had like to get with our counselor, we had a group check, and he was talking about how basically there was a certain blueprint uh, for like the mental health check in the queer community is when the phase when they have trouble identifying finding themselves or finding their identity, right, and they're being abused or harassed and it messed with their mental health. That's when it led to substance abuse to be able to cope with it.
Yeah.
And that's why, like, I mean, from what I got from him, it was prominent that, like, in the queer community, you will see a lot of people abusing substances because, they felt like pariah of the society and to be able to cope with it.
Yeah, absolutely.
What's your take on that? Like, what did you see yourself? Like, is that something that, like, you can agree with, or you think there are other factors?
um I I can't I don't know if I have like a strong opinion on that. I honestly, like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't have too many friends that are also queer. I do have like one very close friend who's also queer and trans, and they also have struggled with substance abuse. So I mean, I have seen that in other queer folks that I'm friends with, but I'd say I don't know enough queer people to make like a huge like kind of judgment on like how common it is. um but I
Mm-hmm.
think that makes sense that if they feel some sort of discrimination or things like that, that yeah, it could be something that might lead to substance abuse. Absolutely.
Yeah. Um, let's talk about like that long period of sobriety you had, those 4 years. What was your process like? You said like you really being in mindfulness. Like, how were you able to put 4 years together?
Yeah, therapy again is a big one for me, in terms of mental health and addiction. I think for me it's something that if I'm not investing in having therapy, the rest of my life just doesn't go well. Like it's something that I have to, like, I do private therapy, so I pay for it, but it's an investment that I really can't skip. Like if I don't engage in therapy, I'm not able to function properly. I'm not able to work. I'm not able to make money. So it's something that I really have to invest in and prioritize in my life. Another thing is, yeah, for the 4.5 years, I was really into yoga for a bit. Yoga was also quite helpful. I would go to like classes pre-COVID, like in the studio and everything like that. Um, so yeah, I'd say yoga, therapy, and yeah, those sorts of things. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that you said yoga because I'm a believer. I'm like also into mindfulness and even I found myself diving deeper into the Shaolin monk way of thinking. There's that guy, Master Shihong Yi, that I follow on YouTube. And I'm one of the believer that in order to be spiritually fit, the body needs to follow somehow. So anything that's like, physical activity at a steady rate, or like at the good frequency, like I go personally to the gym 5 times a week,
Yeah.
and it allows me to be physically fit and mentally fit. Like for me, those two work in tandem.
Yeah.
And yeah, like yoga is definitely a, a good activity. I even had the chance to do yoga, to try yoga when I was in inpatient. I try also Pilates. I prefer
Cool.
Pilates to yoga personally.
Yeah.
I heard there's a war between those two,
Oh.
but like,
Oh man.
yeah. What have you ever tried Pilates?
I actually haven't. But I know a lot of
Mm-hmm.
studios that offer yoga will like also offer Pilates. So maybe I'll have to try it
Yeah.
out. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, like what I found interesting about Pilates is like it's more intense on the ligaments and tendons, and it allows also once you work on those to even lift or heavier, or like to improve your strength because you have a better range of motion. But yeah, like those are the but yeah, you said like therapy for you is paramount to your recovery.
Yeah.
Um what's make a great therapist? Like how did you find your therapy? Like did you um do like trial and error, or they assigned to you, or would you just got lucky? What was the process like to find somebody?
Yeah, I've had kind of different therapists at different points in my life. I've
Mm-hmm.
worked with different therapists for maybe a few years and then switched. So yeah, I'd say what makes a good therapist is someone who you know, is there to listen, but also can provide a lot of just giving you that objective third party feedback of like, someone who's outside of your life. They're not your friends, they're not your family. Someone who can kind of look from the outside and see what's going on in your life and give you some perspective. And I would say, like my current therapist, I found on a website called Psychology Today. They have like a whole directory of therapists and everything. So you can just kind of go on there, search for different therapists by different issues or different, gender identity or things like that that work for you. And yeah, I'd say usually they'll offer like a free consultation. So usually I'll do like, maybe a few consultations with a few people when I'm looking for a therapist. And then whoever kind of, had that good connection with, then I would go with them. And, they've shown in like different studies that the connection you have with your therapist is more important than like whatever school of thought or techniques they're using. So it's like really you have to have that like vibe and that rapport, and you be able to have a nice conversation together for it to work. So yeah, those are some of the things that have helped. Yeah.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Like that, like whatever connection is more important than the school of thought that going to. But like speaking of that connection, do you think it's important? How important is it to you that the therapist um has experienced emotionally the same things you went through?
I
Like let's say yeah, for you for example, is how important is it that like they experience the same mental health issues, or they suffer also from addiction, or they're part also of the queer community? How does that play for you?
Yeah, I I don't think I've had a therapist that has had the same mental health concerns or addiction or anything like
Mm-hmm.
that, or even been a part of the queer community. Yeah, I haven't really had that, like where where the person has the same experiences in life. I don't know that matters for me personally,
Mm-hmm.
because, even if they haven't experienced it, they've probably worked with people who have had similar experiences and, therefore have kind of learned different techniques or ways to help people who have the same concerns. Um, and yeah, so I would say it's not like a must or anything for me. It would be nice like to have, a queer therapist or something like that. It hasn't necessarily worked out for me that way, but I would totally be open to it and would love, to have someone who understands that part of my identity. But I'd say as long as the person is respectful and, not judgmental about that part of my life, then it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
really matter to me too much. Yeah.
Okay, so what was the reason you had to change therapists several? How many therapists you had to go through the period of your life?
I'd say a few, like maybe three or maybe, yeah, something like that. It's three or four.
Yeah.
Um, there was one I worked with for about like 5 years, and we had just kind of worked through kind of everything we had worked through in terms of her school of thought. And she just recommended that maybe I try a different technique, maybe someone who had different styles and stuff like that. So I just found someone new. One therapist, she
Mm-hmm.
changed her prices, unfortunately. So I wasn't able to afford her anymore. So I ended up switching. And then, yeah, another one, kind of same idea. Like we had kind of gone through everything we kind of could have
Mm-hmm.
gone through with their kind of techniques and school of thought. And so then switched it up a little bit. Yeah.
That's very interesting. That like it's as if to me it sounds as if like at some point you you outgrown or they taught you everything they could and the relationship is like I don't know about to fizzle out or is about to get repetitive. So like how does that come? Like is it like can you walk us through to like the period when the therapist tell you, oh, maybe I should recommend you to somebody else? Like how does that happen?
Yeah, just she just brought it up in like a conversation in one of our sessions.
Mm-hmm.
She didn't do it like right away. She wasn't like, "Hey, this is over, like go find someone else." But she just let me know like,
The
"Hey, like,
yeah.
we might want to you might want to consider trying something different. Maybe you might
Mm-hmm.
find someone who's maybe has some better techniques for what you're dealing with." Because borderline personality disorder, it's kind of it's not really like compared to depression and anxiety. It's not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily spoken about as much or like necessarily understood as much even by practitioners. So it can be hard to find someone who really understands that condition and can treat it properly. But yeah, so she just kind of communicated that maybe, we'll try a little bit more stuff, but maybe you want to start looking for something different. Maybe that would help you a little bit more. So then just made that transition and looked for someone new. Yeah.
Okay, I see. Interesting. Talk to us more about what BPD feels like in day-to-day life. Like, let's say, like you take your meds every day,
Mhm.
a good day. What does it feel like?
Yeah. So for me, I have depression, anxiety, and BPD. So they all kind of
Mm-hmm.
overlap and interact in different ways. I'd say the borderline, it's not necessarily, I don't necessarily have like borderline episodes or triggers every day, but on the
Mm-hmm.
days that I do, it just like derails my entire day. So like I might, go a week with just having like, a pretty balanced mood and it's not too bad. But then there's a trigger, there's some type of rejection or anything like that. And then, immediately my mind just goes to like, I'll give a trigger warning for suicide. Immediately my mind will go to suicide. Like I'll get suicidal ideation. I'll start planning on, killing myself. Like it's just, it immediately goes to a very dark place. And it can just be very overwhelming. You get really intense emotions, things feel very
Mm-hmm.
intense. And then, yeah, it's kind of very heightened and, that might last for maybe a few hours. It might last a day. it can vary. But yeah, borderline for me comes in like those spurts of like there's a trigger, there's some sort of intense, thing going on, and then it gets very self-destructive, compared to depression and anxiety, where it might be a little bit more on the daily, a little bit more mild for me at least. BPD just gets
Mhm.
very intense. Yeah.
I see. And oh wow, I didn't know you had like a compounded situation. Like, so is it common that people who have BPD also suffer from depression and anxiety? Like,
Yeah, I don't know the exact statistics, but yeah, people with borderline typically suffer from, yeah, several other mental health issues.
mental issues.
It typically overlaps with a lot of different concerns. Yeah.
Hmm. That's funny. And you personally, like, how did that happen? Like, is it from, did you had a history of mental illness in your family, or was that due to like abuse in an experience your life?
Yeah, I'd say it was both. I have a mental illness running on both sides of my family. So definitely there's a genetic component. But yeah, I did deal with
Mm-hmm.
trauma growing up. I won't go into details, but yeah, I have experienced trauma a lot growing up, especially. And yeah, so definitely there's a trauma aspect, there's a genetic aspect, and that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Okay, so that's interesting. Like, yeah, like a combination of both. So how do you deal? What are your coping mechanism when you're having one of your episode? Um, do you have a game plan you go through to take you out of it?
Yeah, for me, I will usually use different crisis lines. So I will
Mm-hmm.
either call or text a crisis line and try to work with like some sort of counselor who's able to work with me. So that's usually my go-to crisis line. If I'm able to get a hold of my regular therapist, I will try to reach out to him. He's usually pretty flexible on like, sending a quick text or a quick email if I'm struggling. Yeah, and then if I'm in the right headspace, I will try the mindfulness, but it's so intense you can't do the mindfulness.
Tense, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
If it's really, really bad, I'm starting to really, really plan suicide or have even attempted, then I will go to the ER if it's
Mm-hmm.
necessary. So yeah, but I'd say crisis lines are like my number one. Like that's what I go to first. Yeah.
Yeah, I see. Yeah, and shout out to the crisis line. I don't even know all of them. Like, I'm definitely gonna list, the one for suicide prevention in the description. But I wanted to abord the topic of social interaction because, like, like you said earlier, um, your relapse after 4 years was due to a bad breakup. But like, let's start with normal social interaction with friends and stuff. How do you navigate uh the social scene knowing that you have mental illness? Like, is it something that you disclose to your friends early on, or how does that work?
Yeah, I'm pretty open about my mental health issues. I'd say it
Mm-hmm.
comes up usually naturally in conversation. Um, yeah, I'd say, I mean, yeah, at this point, I'm not making like a ton of new friends. But the friends that are in my life are definitely aware and very supportive, or, even have their own struggles that we support each other through. So yeah, I'd say if I am meeting someone new, it's something that usually comes up, that I will mention. Um, but yeah, my friends that are already in my life, yeah, they're very aware, and they're quite supportive. Yeah.
That's good. Those are definitely great friends, and I'm glad that in this world, like I mean, nowadays, in the recent years, we're like very more tolerant toward like mental health. I personally don't suffer that I know of any diagnosed mental illness, but I have definitely moments where like I need to keep myself in check in order not to be burned out or to fall into a mild depression and stuff. So like there's definitely a more tolerant take on the whole mental health aspect. But does it happen sometimes to you that people kind of stay away from you because of, you know, like they don't know how to deal with they don't know how to react to mental illness, like they don't know how to, they would rather stay away. Have you ever experienced that?
I would say for me, like I have really bad anxiety. So I'd say in
Mm-hmm.
social situations, like I'm probably not the most like I don't know the way to phrase it, but like I'm not the most like sociable person. It's not very easy for me to make friends or like new
Mm-hmm.
connections. So I'd say that like it definitely impacts my social life. I don't know, necessarily about people specifically not, wanting to be friends with me because of my mental illness, but I'd say that because of my anxiety, like it does make it very difficult to make new friends or to have those new conversations or to, go to some sort of group event where I might meet new people. It can definitely kind of limit my social kind of connections. Yeah.
I see. But that's, what's funny, you're here doing a podcast and you're doing fine. So like, um, yeah, that's kind of surprising because like I don't see your anxiety right now. And yeah, now let's go deeper in that conversation. How does what's your approach to now when it comes to like intimate relationships, like deeper, like like
Mhm.
looking for a partner and stuff?
Yeah. I'm at the point where like I'm very, upfront about yeah, like that I deal with mental health concerns. I'm yeah, very
Mm-hmm.
selective about yeah, who I, spend time with and I would say yeah, going into the dating world, try to be upfront about what I'm looking for as well, because that can be, a point of issues if, you're not necessarily on the
Mm-hmm.
same page or looking for the same things. So I try to, if I'm on a dating app or whatever, like put that on my profile, exactly what I'm looking for, like that I'm looking for a longer term relationship. Try to, connect with people who are looking for the same thing. And then, yeah, when you are dating or hanging out with the person, I guess, just trying to be aware of like, is there that connection? Is there not? And trying to be honest with myself about whether there is, because I mean, in the past, I might have continued relationships that maybe weren't the best for me. Just because I wanted to be in a relationship or I wanted to have someone. Whereas now I'm a little bit more comfortable
Mm-hmm.
being, single if it means that, I'll find the right person eventually. So.
Yeah. That's definitely a problem that I've seen in a lot of people, some that I've interviewed, other people I had conversation with. The idea of being alone, people would rather be in a bad relationship than be alone. Basically codependency. Will you consider yourself codependent at some point? Or
I'd say I have been in a codependent relationship. I wouldn't consider
mm-hmm,
myself that anymore. I think, working through therapy and working on my different, skills and stuff like that and interpersonal
mm-hmm,
skills, I would say that I'm not like when I enter into a relationship these days. I'm much more aware and more careful about, how much I'm depending on a partner and how much I need to focus on myself and do that self care and take care of myself and not rely on another person for my well being. Um, so, yeah, I'd say at this point, no, but I have definitely been there in my life. Yeah, in the past. Yeah.
yeah. And how do you balance now? I mean, because you just said it at the beginning of the interview, you in a phase where you're trying to still get back on the horse of sobriety, but sometimes you have those challenges. I don't know, hiccups maybe.
Mhm.
What are the things that you face? Can you give us maybe an example of an episode where that was like hard for you to deal with?
Yeah. I'd say like last week I think I had maybe like maybe 10-ish days of sobriety, and then I yeah had like kind of an episode, a borderline episode, just like a comment that was made that was kind of hurtful by someone, and yeah, just immediately spiraled into that BPD mode of feeling really triggered and impulsive, and immediately, went to pour a drink, and you know relapsed, and had kind of like a binge drinking episode. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I'm kind of, immediately tried to get right back on, the sobriety path. So, now I'm at 6 days, so I'm trying to keep going. So
Woohoo!
yeah, thank you. So
Yeah.
yeah, just kind of taking it one day at a time, like they say. And if there are hiccups or slips, trying to get right back on track as much as possible. So yeah, just kind of
Yeah.
trial and error, and trying to get back on that path. Yeah.
That made me think of this. I want to hear your opinion on this. Like, some people, for example, cannot string more than 3 months together, but like, or maybe a month, just a certain period of time. But then they go out for 2 days, but then they get back on the horse. And in at least in the, I'm gonna take the AA community, but because that's the one I'm a part of, and I've seen that happening. There's judgment passed upon those people who cannot string long sobriety, but are often back in the room. They will have like 1 day every 3 months, but they go on maybe a 2 day burner max. They don't go for like 6 months and come back. They go for 2 days max, they come back. I personally don't think there's too much harm to that. Like, because I mean, I believe I'm a firm believer in harm reduction.
Yeah.
Harm reduction is better than going out and just going on a bender. So yeah, what's your take on that? Like, do you believe also in harm reduction?
Yes, I do. Yeah, definitely a big
Mm-hmm.
component of harm reduction. I think whatever makes sense for that person, it's very individualized. If abstinence is
Mm-hmm.
their goal, and if that works for them, that's great. If harm
Mm-hmm.
reduction is what works for them, and that's what their journey is, then that's also great. Yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
would pass any judgment on anyone for having, yeah, like those relapses or slips. And then, the fact that they are getting back in those rooms and getting back on that path, that shows a lot of strength, that those people are trying.
Yeah.
They're trying, they're trying their
Yeah,
best.
trying.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're doing what they can. And
Mm-hmm.
that's okay if it doesn't look quote unquote perfect, like it doesn't
Yeah.
have to be a perfect string of sobriety, I'd say. Yeah, whatever
Mm-hmm.
works on for that person, whatever's getting them closer to their goals. I'd say yeah, more power to them. Yeah.
Yeah, like I agree with you. My only concern when I was thinking about this topic was, um, I I'm concerned that one might feel complacent into harm reduction.
Mm.
Like, there might be like, okay, let's take that same hypothetical person who can only string 3 months together. I think if they're in the mindset that, oh, here's come the third month, I'm gonna enjoy my drink, I'm gonna come back. I think that's a different mindset than like actually trying your best to go to 4, but for some reason you cannot get there.
Yeah.
Like the intentions are different.
Yeah.
So do you understand the difference between those two examples?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's so complicated. I mean, it's really hard to
Mm-hmm.
say. Yeah, I'd say either way, they're they're still not drinking every day, and they're making some sort of progress. So yeah, it really depends. Whatever feels good to that person, whatever aligns with their goals or is helping them getting closer to their goals. Um, you know,
Mm-hmm.
I yeah, I wouldn't judge them either way with the different mindsets, I would say. Yeah.
Yeah, like it's just like I don't know. Like I'm always curious about you know discerning what people mindset and and at the opposite side of that spectrum, you have those who value the day count, like the only measure of somebody's sobriety. They can be dickheads, they can be like very terrible person, but they are 48 years, and everybody takes their word as gospel. I have a very good friend to this podcast, Rich, who I had the chance to talk at his 1 year anniversary. And, we went to rehab together. So I talk about our experience together, and I talk also about what keeps us sober. But I didn't make it about myself, right? And there's that old man after the meeting that comes to me, is like, oh yeah, I kind of like your take. But you know what was funny also, during when I was making my doing my speech, making yeah when I was talking, I made eye contact with him several times in the audience, and he didn't look happy at all.
Oh no.
So like yeah, when when he came to me, he was like, oh yeah man, good job talking, but yeah, when you start, you should always talk about your first drink. I'm like, why? Like, this is not, I'm not talking about my story. I'm
Right.
talking about my friend Rich anniversary.
Yeah.
And he was like, oh, yeah, my name is so. Like, I have 48 years. And I'm like, I'm like, yeah, cool, bro. And he asked me, how long do you have? And I'm like, I don't know. I had 6 months at the time. I'm like, 6 months? It's like, yeah, man. Like, if you want like a mentor, I'm like, you see, my mom raised me right. That man was much older, but if he was about my age, I don't know what I would have done. So yeah, like I was saying, like the thing in those people who have a long sobriety, they think they have the gospel in their hand, and that approach was not like um. What's your experience? Have you ever been in the group of any fellowship like AA or anything like that? Have you tried those?
I have tried 12 steps, I think, a couple times. It didn't really necessarily resonate with me. I was raised religious, and I'm not religious anymore, so that kind of aspect of it kind of didn't work for me. Yeah, I do
Mhm.
use that group that I mentioned is called Reframe, and they have different recovery meetings almost every day on the app. And yeah, so I try to go to those meetings at least once a week, and it's kind of similar to AA, but there's not like any
Mhm.
prayers or anything. It's more like focused on neuroscience, and it's very secular. So people are just like sharing their stories and supporting each other. So it's kind of a similar environment, but just a little bit more secular. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true that the AA is still like very it's brand itself as being a spiritual program, but it has religious tendencies. And I understand how it can push people away because even now, to make it more progressive, there's a resistance because the old heads, they're like, no, it was done this way in the 1930s. But I'm like, exactly, it was in the 19 fucking 30s. So we're like in 2000 something, 20, almost 90 years later. Come on, man. Like, you need to adapt some few things,
Yeah.
right? Me personally, uh I wear my sobriety on my sleeve. So the anonymity part of it is, it's my choice, right? Like I disclose my sobriety, my recovery. But like what I'm even doing right now, having a podcast, and you also talking about your issues and stuff, for them it's like a no. Oh, that brings another topic that I want to do. So like I I enjoy non-alcoholic drinks. I'm more into like any non-alcoholic cocktails than non-alcoholic beer. Like I'm not a fan of non-alcoholic beers
Yeah.
because I'm not a fan of something that's very analog of the alcoholic counterpart.
Mm.
Like because I'm like, am I fooling myself? Like, I will have it if there's no other choice. But what's your experience, you personally, with the non-alcoholic drinks?
Yeah, I enjoy like a mocktail or something. If I'm going out for like dinner or
Mm.
something, I will have like some sort of mocktail. I find it's kind of like a nice treat. It's not too triggering for me. It doesn't really, make me want to drink or anything. So yeah, I usually will, if I'm going out with a friend, and enjoy a mocktail. I don't know if it's okay to
Mhm.
talk about this, but I'm like a medical marijuana patient, so you know,
Oh yeah,
yeah,
sure.
don't
Yeah,
want to
yeah,
trigger
it's okay.
anyone whose issue is
Oh,
marijuana,
oh man,
but
yeah. Uh-huh.
yeah, so I'm
Trigger warning.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a medical marijuana patient. So I like CBD drinks. I find those very relaxing for me. CBD is something that I find useful on my journey. So yeah, so I enjoy like a CBD drink if I'm, want to relax on like a weekend or something instead of drinking. Yeah.
Yeah, I never tried a CBD drink. I don't think I had the chance to. I drink kava. Have you ever heard of kava?
No.
Kava. So kava, it's like a extract from a root from the Pacific Islands, and it's a drink that's like very earthy. It's like drinking like dirt,
Cool.
but it has those relaxing properties. And kava bars are coming up. At least here in New York City, you have in Long Island, you have like a few of them. Yeah, kava is like basically the way I see it in the spectrum of stimulants, or like no spectrum of mind altering stuff. I see it as like the opposite of coffee. It's not something that are gonna make you like, people drink coffee. People think that coffee, but not a lot of people see coffee as like a mind altering substance, but it is.
Yeah.
It gives you a boost, it's stimulant, but people are not like, I still drink coffee, I'm not like addicted to it.
Mm,
But kava is on the other side of it, just other like where it relaxes you, but you still like, how you call it? You're not into Mm. You're not like drunk or under the influence or anything like that. You
right.
still like, it's a body. It relaxes like your mind.
Yeah.
Like it's not like, yeah. But yeah, like, people who want to call themselves sober even when they smoke marijuana, I give kudos to them. Because, and that's another thing also in like the fellowship that I follow. For them, it's a foreign topic.
Yeah.
Um, but it is what it is. Like, I don't want to argue with them so much.
Hmm.
Um, you know, um, I don't know how to say it. Whatever keeps you alive at some point, right? And
Hmm.
helps you be a better person, in my opinion, is a good path to be, right?
Totally. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. So what else? Oh, sorry. I forgot what I wanted to ask
Oh,
for a
that's
second.
okay.
Yeah. Um, yeah. So yes, now I remember. So when you go out and you have like those, mocktails with your friend, do you have sometime? Do you need to get yourself mentally ready in order to Do you play like the event in your head in order not to relapse or to drink there? What's your process like when you're ready to go out in a scene where they serve alcohol?
Yeah, honestly, for me, I don't have as much of an issue when I'm out and about or like at an event. I usually will drink like kind of alone, like at home. So for me, if I'm
Mm-hmm.
going out and I have in my mind, I'm going to get a mocktail today, like it's usually not too hard for me to stick to that plan. Like I'm able, especially if
Mm-hmm.
my friends know that I'm working on my sobriety, I'm like, yeah, I don't want to be, drinking around them. I'll show them that I'm working on my goals. But Yeah, I'd say I struggle more when I'm like alone, like with drinking, like kind of at
Mm,
home, more isolated experience. So going out not is not as much of like an issue for me. It's more, being at home, having that, maybe some free time on my hands and then I'm bored and I want to drink. Like that's more of kind of an issue for me. Yeah.
yeah, like that's interesting. Me at um yeah, alone not so much.
Mhm.
Like I was when I was drinking, I was able to drink alone, but when I did stop, I was, I think alone is the easy part. Um, Going out definitely in the early stage, now less, but in the early stage, I needed to play the night in my head first. Like, let's say I go to a concert, like, I love house music. So house music is, the scene is littered with drugs. So like, I'm like, okay, I'm going to go to this venue. I'm going to see people do drugs. How I'm going to react? I'm gonna be offered drugs. How am I gonna react? Like, what if the girl is pretty and she gives me drugs? How am I gonna react? I need to play those scenarios in my head to make sure that like I actually check myself mentally and I don't lie to myself because my issue was that, you know, being, being exposed to being faced to an unexpected situation and then having to think right on the fly. You were talking about impulses earlier. I had to deal with those impulses sometimes because I didn't see those coming. And yeah, that was my issue at the beginning of my sobriety when I was trying to get this thing right. How does that work for you sometimes when you're like, you know,
Getting ready for situations where I might be.
like that do you not expect, like, you told us, for example, that like last week somebody made a comment
Mhm.
that was kind of hurtful
Yeah.
and that's what made you but what are your techniques, like what do you try to do when things that are like unexpected happen, like
Yeah. I guess, yeah, it depends. Like, I think a lot of the things that I mentioned, either a crisis
mhm,
line or reaching out to my therapist or mindfulness or things like that. Yeah, if things kind of go off track, yeah, just trying to stay grounded and centered. Maybe if it might not even be a meditation, even just taking a few deep breaths and kind of trying to be aware of what's going on. And yeah, I will also use like I different like the app that I mentioned, Reframe, they have like a little
mhm,
forum. So, if stuff's going on, you can post a message on there and like get support from other people. There's another app I use called I Am Sober. They also have like a little forum that you can use. So I might hop on there and, post about what's going on and then get some support or feedback from other people. So I find that can also be helpful. Yeah.
yeah, I see. All right. We're reaching the end of this interview. I think now the floor is yours. Is there anything you would like to talk to about before we close, or even ask me any question?
Yeah. So how was like inpatient for you? Like what was that like?
Oh, it's funny you ask because I said that to somebody else asked me like 2 days ago. So I did the 28 days program. Um, the first week is hell. The second and third week go fast, and the last week is hell. Not actually hell. No, let me correct that. The first week is hell. The second and week is okay. The fourth week is hell for different reasons. So the first week you really don't want to be there, like, and you don't have a choice. They take your phone away.
Mhm.
You need to find things to do with your time, like, like screen wise. I mean, we have TVs and stuff, but having your phone not having your phone makes you realize how much depending to the phone you were. And you have to deal with your emotions. um yeah. And there's no escape. Like the questions are about how you feel. You need to talk to the counselor. You need to tell them your stories. You don't have anything to cope. So like the nerve are very raw over there. Like, you can headbutt, but you can butt heads, not headbutt. You can butt heads with other, like, people there and stuff. Um, the second and third week, now you used to it. They go fast. They go in a blink and a eye. Like, most of the people there. Definitely like one of the older patient because, the rotation in those things is pretty high. The fourth week is hard because now you see the repetition of the classes by the time you've seen, like, because all the class, they repeat themselves.
Mm.
So, obviously it makes sense because it's a 4-week program and most people stay 2 to 3 weeks in average.
Mm.
So if you get the chance to stay 4 weeks, you're going to see the same thing that you learn in the first week. And then you're like, now it tests your discipline to stay still and not be upset because you watching videos you already seen, you listening to speeches you already heard, the speakers are the same, and the most dreadful thing is like the final day when you're about to leave and they give you back your phone. And I remember turning my phone back on, but waiting for a solid 30 minutes before even opening unlocking the phone
Yeah.
and looking, because I was so used now not to have my phone. I was like, that little cube, man, that little rectangle is gonna ruin my life again. But yeah,
Oh, wow.
it's like, it was basically now I need to go out because like by the fourth week you realize that you were in a safe environment, protected from everything outside, and it's a little bit dreadful to know that you have to go back out there and then face your demons, like, yeah.
Wow. Yeah, it's cool to hear a little bit about your journey too.
Yeah, it was, I can kind of say it was fun. Like, I don't like rehab.
Hmm.
And that was my second rehab.
Hmm.
I went to rehab twice.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah. I mean, there times it's like taking a bad tasting medicine, but that is necessary for you. Like, basically, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
All right. Thank you for asking. That's funny.
Of course.
Yeah. All right, guys. Anything else?
I would just say, to anyone that's listening, like we were talking about, harm reduction is okay too. And wherever you're at on your journey, as long as you're working towards your goals and are aligned with, those goals, then, more power to you and, good luck on your journey. So,
Okay, all right. Thank you, Mercedes, for being the guest of Stairway to Redemption. And guys, I will see you guys for the conclusion. Bye. All right. This concludes episode 49 of Stairway to Redemption. Thank you a lot to Mercedes for being a guest to this episode and being very insightful on her take on sobriety. I would like to apologize, guys, for being sporadic with the episode. I know I said every 2 weeks, but he hasn't been consistent yet. Like I said in my Instagram post, I'm still being adjusting myself to my new schedule and everything that I need to know that I have going on in my life. Nothing dramatic, just need to manage my time better, basically. I may have something to announce next week, but I would rather work on it a little bit more before I can see if I can make it happen. But it goes along having our first live episode, so stay tuned for that. And guys, as usual, support us on Patreon and on social media, and I will see you guys in 2 weeks. Bye.